So in this hearing that we talked about earlier on November 3rd, Senate hearing on red tagging, the representatives of the government presented a video of Jose Maria Sison implicating some militant organizations in this country as part of their front. Okay, the underground front that the Constitution talks about, the one that I read to you earlier. So let's just show you the video.
The Philippine Revolution is to be advanced.
Okay, so Jose Maria Sison said the Philippine Revolution has to be advancing. They need to up their game in order to infiltrate the levers of powers in this government. Okay, that's the goal. And well, commonsensical, if you would like to defeat your enemy, you need to infiltrate your enemy. Okay, every revolutionary group does that. Okay, even in America, they do that.
Include the building of the Communist Party of the Philippines, the building of the new People's Army, and the building of the National Democratic Front. The Communist Party of the Philippines was established on December 6, 1968 as the Marxist-Leninist vanguard party of the working class. This party is supposed to be the standard bearer of the working class, which is that class that is the most progressive, productive, and political force in the Philippines. It is true that a minority class, especially only the party whose representative cannot win the Philippine Revolution all by itself. Anyway, even while there are the forces of our revolution, there are the legal democratic forces in the Philippines.
Okay, so now he used the term legal democratic forces in the Philippines. Okay, again, we're talking about semantics here. Okay, infiltrating a particular society, you need to be legal. Okay, without admitting that you're part of the enemy. That's part of it. That's the reason why it's integral on the part of the military or the intel of this government to identify these enemies without sacrificing the rights of the people. The identification of these enemies of the state or the underground fronts of the cpp-npa must be surgically accurate in order not to sacrifice the rights of other people. Okay, yes, some other people, a lot of people are critical of the Duterte government. I'm part of them. But these are not members of the Communist Party. They're not sympathizers of the communists. So the military or the intel must be able to separate that in order not to sacrifice the rights of the people or in order not to cause more injustice. Okay, we're simply dealing with this underground democratic fronts of the cpp-npa. Okay, this is why it must be very careful. The government must be very careful in trying to sort out the real enemies, the real sympathizers or part of the democratic fronts of the cpp-npa and those critical of the government. Because if you're gonna violate the rights of those critical of the government, you're not serving justice. You're not fighting communism or corruption or the enemy of the state. You're basically violating the constitutional rights of these people critical of the government.
The biggest of these.
Okay, so here Mr. Jose Maria Sison started to talk about the legal organizations who are front of the Communist Party. Okay?
Is bagong alyansang Makabayan, or Bayan in short. It has a membership of more than 2 million members in more than 1,000 member organizations. Its biggest component organizations are Kilusang Mayukulo, which is the labor center, the Pambansang Kilusang Magbubukid, which is the Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas or KMP, Gabriela, the Women's Alliance, League of Filipino Students, Alliance of Concerned Teachers, Cadena, and so on. As I have earlier pointed out, Partido ng Bayan.
Alright, so there you go. That's JoMa Sison talking about parts of or militant organizations in the Philippines that are part of the underground front of the Communist Party. So as we discussed here earlier, okay, so the National Democratic Front is the most consolidated underground united front organization of basic revolutionary forces. Who are these basic revolutionary forces? And these forces explicitly under working class leadership informed for armed struggle along the general line of national democratic revolution. So they're part of this KMU, the Bayan Muna, Gabriela, League of Filipino Students. They're part of the legal. And as JoMa Sison said, legal. Okay, you using the word legal does not exempt them from the fact that they're part of your organization. Okay, they're part of the enemy of the state. They're sympathizers of the communists. We don't know, but that's the reason why I said that the military should be able to gather more evidence in order to target only the real underground fronts or groups of the Communist Party, because they're taking advantage of our legal system and our free speech in order to use this against us, in order to defeat our system. And if they're gonna defeat our country, if we're not gonna fight for our survival, they're gonna be worse than the existing government that we have today. They're not gonna be merciful in respecting our rights to free speech. We know the history of socialist struggles and successes in the world today. So the Communist Party of China, that's not really friendly to free expression. The communist struggle in Cambodia and Myanmar, Vietnam, they all won, their own revolution, that they deprived their own citizens of the right to free speech and freedoms after they won. Okay, it's part of their agenda. This is part of the identified communist tactic called ideological subversion, and this strategy has 4 stages. But let's listen to Yuri Bezmenov, who is a former member of the KGB of Soviet Russia, in this interview.
When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community.
So basically, Mr. Yuri Bezmenov is speaking of the ideological subversion that's being used to America in the past from the 1960s. But it can also be applied here in the Philippines because, like I said, the communists are very strategic. They know what they're doing. And all this KMU, the Gabriela, LFS, what else, Bayan Muna, these are part of the ideological subversion mechanisms of the CPP-NPA, and the ideological subversion tactic has 4 stages, and they try to demoralize the country, okay, by claiming that there is injustice in this country, the gap between the poor and the rich, and that we must fight for our right as proletarian class. So they're trying to educate the whole generation in Marxist ideology. And then the second stage is destabilization. They're trying to destabilize our economy. So we hope we have not reached this stage yet. And then there's crisis, and then normalization. So the communists, through its deceptive methods or tactics, are still under demoralization and destabilization stages. Okay, that's the reason why the government, through the military and intel, should be able to surgically identify with 100% accuracy who are these members or sympathizers of the communists, who are part of its legal democratic front, in order to stop them from trying to infiltrate our government and to subvert whatever remaining freedom that we have today.